So how does a company that's practically synonymous with the ultimate sports car also become this absolute industrial giant by selling a luxury SUV? It sounds kind of weird, right? Well, the answer is this incredible mix of brilliant engineering, a wild billion-dollar gamble that literally saved the company, and honestly, a deep, deep understanding of what people really want. Let's dig in and deconstruct Porsche's formula for success. Okay, to really get what makes Porsche so special, you first have to look at the undisputed king of profit, Ferrari. I mean, check this out. In 2023, for every single car they sold, Ferrari banked, get this, a staggering $192,000 in pure profit. Now Porsche, by comparison, they made around 37 grand. So you look at that and you think, okay, no contest, Ferrari wins. But that's exactly where this story gets really interesting.
And that right there, that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did Porsche build this absolute profit empire while making so much less per car than its biggest rival? The answer, it turns out, is a total masterclass in business strategy. And it has a lot less to do with just building fast cars.
So here's how we're going to crack this case. We'll start with the profit puzzle, then look at their engineer's edge. We'll get into the billion-dollar gamble, see how they swallowed a whale, understand the science of prestige, and finally, look at the road ahead.
All right, first up, the profit puzzle. You know, while Porsche doesn't have that Ferrari crown for profit per car, only comparing those two, well, you're missing the real story. We need to zoom out a bit and see how they stack up against, everybody else.
And this is where the picture really snaps into focus. Okay, yeah, Ferrari is just on another planet. We get it. But look down the rest of that list. Porsche is making more than 3 times the profit per car as Mercedes-Benz, over 5 times more than Tesla, and an absolutely insane 20 times more than a giant like Ford. So you see, the key isn't that they're number 2 to Ferrari. The key is that they are absolutely dominating everyone else.
So what's the secret sauce? How do they do it? Well, it's not just one thing, but a huge part of it starts with something that's been baked into their DNA from day one. Let's call it the engineer's edge.
Okay, this is so important to get. Porsche did not start out building cars. Nope. They started way back in 1931 as an engineering consultancy. They were problem solvers for hire. In fact, they designed the legendary Volkswagen Beetle long before they ever dreamed of putting their own crest on a car in '48. And that engineering-first mindset, it is absolutely the foundation of everything they do today.
Think about it. For pretty much every other car company, R&D is just this giant black hole for money, a huge cost. But for Porsche, it's a profit center. Yeah, you heard that right. Through their Porsche engineering group, they actually sell their world-class expertise to other companies, working on everything from Audis to forklifts. Seriously, it's a brilliant move. It makes them money, sure, but it also lets them keep this massive team of incredible engineers on the payroll, which gives them a crazy advantage when it comes time to build their own cars.
But even that engineering edge wasn't always enough. By the early 90s, the company was circling the drain. They were on the verge of collapse, and that desperation led to one of the biggest, most controversial, and riskiest gambles in the history of the car industry.
I mean, the situation in the early 90s was just dire. Sales had completely tanked, they were bleeding cash, and the CEO knew that just building more of their iconic sports cars wasn't going to cut it. His solution was, well, it was unthinkable. For the purists, it was absolute heresy. Porsche was going to build an SUV. It was this massive bet that could either save the company or completely destroy its soul.
And the bet paid off. Oh man, did it pay off. The Cayenne SUV launched in 2003, and you can see the impact almost instantly. Look at that chart. Within just a few years, production numbers basically doubled, and revenue just shot straight up. The very car that the hardcore fans called a corruption of the brand. It didn't just save Porsche, it became the financial engine that funded everything for the next decade.
So now they're flush with cash, thanks to the Cayenne. And what does Porsche do? They make their most audacious, most insane move yet. They decided to try and take over one of the biggest companies in the world. Just look at this. I mean, the sheer mismatch in 2007 is unbelievable. You've got Porsche, with about 12,000 employees, and they set their sights on the Volkswagen Group, a behemoth with over 300,000 employees, and 60 times the sales volume. It's a classic David and Goliath story. And in one of the most incredible corporate power plays ever, Porsche used all that new cash to buy a majority stake in the giant. It was literally the minnow swallowing the whale.
Okay, but this creates a huge new problem, right? So much of Porsche's value is tied up in its elite, exclusive image.
So how in the world do you protect that when you're now tied at the hip with a mass-market giant and you're building cars like the Cayenne that literally share parts with a Volkswagen?
Well, the answer is you figure out how to make a mass-produced car feel like it was handmade just for you. This is what they call their manufacturer advantage. And we're not talking about a few color options here. We're talking about over 1,000 of them. They have a program called Sonderwunsch, which just means special request, that lets you create a car that is truly a one-of-one. I mean, imagine having your car's paint applied by hand, a process that takes over 7 hours, or having the leather interior stitched in a custom pattern that only you have. It's this obsession with the details that turns a vehicle into a personal statement, and that creates this powerful feeling of exclusivity even while the company is building more cars than ever.
So let's recap. You've got the incredible engineering, you've got the blockbuster SUV printing money, and you've got this bespoke, handmade feel. All of these things come together to power the real economic engine behind Porsche's profit machine, the magic of prestige pricing.
Yeah, it's a thing called prestige pricing, and it's a wild idea. It's a strategy where the high price isn't just a result of the quality. The high price itself is a feature of the product. It's not just about covering costs. It's a tool they use to create the feeling of value, of status, of being part of an exclusive club. You're not just buying an object, you're buying into an idea. This is the totally backward-sounding psychology that makes the whole luxury world go round. For most things, a higher price means fewer people buy it. But here, a high price doesn't push people away. It actually signals quality and makes the premium feel justified. That feeling of scarcity, whether it's from a limited edition or just your own super personalized car, makes you want it even more. And it creates this weird economic situation where, up to a certain point, raising the price can actually make more people want to buy it. That's the secret sauce.
Okay, so what does all this mean for the future? I mean, how does a company that built its legend on the sound and feel of gasoline engines navigate a future that's looking more and more electric? You know, maybe the best clue to Porsche's future comes from its founder, Ferry Porsche. He said, "In the beginning, I looked around and could not find the car I dreamed of, so I decided to build it myself." See, the mission was never really about a specific technology, like a flat-six engine. It was always about building a dream car. That was the goal back in 1948 with a little sports car, and it's the exact same goal today, whether that car is an SUV or it's fully electric.
And that leaves us with one final big question. We're heading into an electric future where insane acceleration and instant torque, well, they're going to be available in a lot of cars. Speed itself is about to become a commodity. So, in that world, what makes a brand like Porsche special? What are people actually buying? Will it be the raw performance numbers, or will it be the story, the craftsmanship, the prestige? In other words, the dream. That's the billion-dollar question, and Porsche is betting its entire future on the answer.
You know that three-pointed star, right? It's way more than just a logo on a car. It stands for luxury, for incredible engineering, for, well, over a century of history. But how did it get there? How did that symbol become such an icon? That's what we're going to break down today. We're going to look at the whole story of Mercedes-Benz, from a single revolutionary patent all the way to the massive challenges they're facing right now.
Okay, so here's the plan. We're starting at the very beginning, the invention of the car itself. Then, we'll dive into the innovations that literally changed how safe our cars are. After that, we'll get into the design, what makes a Mercedes look like a Mercedes. We'll also unpack how they sold a lifestyle, not just a car. And finally, we'll look at the big one, their challenge to conquer the electric future.
All right, so let's jump in. Where does a story like this even begin? Well, it's not with a machine, actually. It's with the vision, the obsession, and just the sheer grit of one person. And this quote from the man himself, Carl Benz, really says it all. The love of invention never dies. I mean, that's the core of their DNA right there. It wasn't just about making a thing to sell. It was this deep, driving passion to create. And honestly, that spirit has been the engine powering Mercedes-Benz ever since. And listen, this did not happen overnight, not even close. Carl Benz went through decades of trial and error. We're talking founding companies, failing, starting over, all leading up to this huge breakthrough in 1886. That's the year he filed the patent for his vehicle with gas engine drive. And that patent, it was basically the birth certificate for the modern car.
Now, here's what's so cool about the patent Motorwagen. A lot of people might think it was just, a carriage with an engine stuck on it. But no, Benz saw it as one complete integrated machine. The engine, the body, the steering, it was all designed to work together from the ground up. And that was a huge leap forward.
But you know, an invention is pretty useless if nobody believes in it. And that's where the story gets really interesting, because his wife, Bertha Benz, steps in. In 1888, she did something amazing. She took their two sons, didn't even tell her husband, and went on a 100-kilometer road trip. This wasn't just for fun. It was the world's first real road test, and it proved to everyone watching that this automobile thing was for real.
So that first spark of invention, it kicked off this incredible culture of non-stop engineering. It's what defined the brand for the next 100 years, especially when it came to keeping people safe.
Okay, let's talk about the crumple zone. We totally take it for granted today, right? Every car has one. But it was a revolutionary idea, patented by Mercedes-Benz way back in 1951. Before that, everyone thought the safest car was the strongest, most rigid car possible. The problem was, in a crash, all that force just went straight to the passengers. But their idea was brilliant. It was so simple, yet it changed everything. They said, let's build a super strong, rigid safety cell for the people, but then let's make the front and back of the car designed to, well, crumple. These zones would absorb the crash energy, protecting everyone inside. It was a game changer, and it's a fundamental part of every single car built today.
And they didn't stop there. Next up was another huge one, the anti-lock braking system, or ABS. You've definitely heard of it. The whole point was to stop the wheels from locking up when you slam on the brakes. This meant you could still steer, you could avoid whatever was in front of you. Just an incredible safety leap.
But here's the thing about ABS. It was so much more than just one feature. Think of it like the foundation for all modern car safety tech. It was the cornerstone that made things like traction control and electronic stability possible. It totally redefined what active safety even was.
Okay, so the engineering is legendary. But a Mercedes isn't just about what's under the hood, is it? It's about that look, that feel. So how did they create a design that is so instantly recognizable, so desired all over the world?
Well, their design philosophy is pretty fascinating. They're not just chasing the latest fads. The whole goal is to be modern, but also timeless. Their designers actually talk about a gene pool, this collection of core design elements that they keep reinterpreting so that no matter how new a car is, you instantly know, yep, that's a Mercedes. And the perfect example of this is the radiator grille. You have the classic, traditional grille that's been a status symbol for over 100 years. But then you also have the sporty one with the big star in the middle, which came from their 1950s race cars. They're constantly playing with both of these, evolving them, but that face of the car always remains unmistakably Mercedes. All right, so you've got the world-class engineering, you've got the iconic design. How do you sell it? Well, this is where Mercedes-Benz became masters. They figured out how to sell not just a car, but a whole lifestyle.
So who are they selling this lifestyle to? Well, if you look at the typical owner, they're pretty successful. We're talking an affluent, accomplished demographic. You know, professionals, executives, people who've really made it.
And their marketing is so smart. Check out this campaign. They used data from LinkedIn to find people who had just gotten a promotion. And the ad was simple, it was genius. You just updated your CV? Isn't it time to update your car? I mean, come on, that's a brilliant way to link that feeling of success with buying one of their cars. And this all feeds into their legendary slogan, right? The best or nothing. That's not just a clever marketing line. It's the promise that connects everything we've talked about. The engineering, the safety, the design. It sets this incredibly high standard, and for their customers, that really means something. But today, that very promise is facing its biggest test ever. How does a company that built its entire reputation on the internal combustion engine survive and thrive in an all-electric world? And they're not thinking small. Their goal is for over 30% of all their sales to be electric by 2027. I mean, think about that. For a company whose entire history is wrapped up in the gas engine, that is a massive pivot.
But here's the problem, the real tension they're dealing with right now. Their number one selling car, the gas-powered GLC SUV. The super profitable G-Wagon, sales are going up. But their fully electric cars, deliveries have actually gone down recently. And that's the conflict, right? How do you balance the cars that are making you money today with the cars you need to build for tomorrow?
So their strategy is all about balance. They have to keep making the gas cars that people clearly still want, while at the same time pouring billions into the next wave of electric vehicles. They're even building both kinds of cars on the same assembly lines, which is a really smart way to stay flexible no matter which way the market goes. And all of this leaves us with one huge question. In a future where that famous engine roar is replaced by the quiet hum of a battery, can Mercedes-Benz still be Mercedes-Benz? Can they still deliver on that promise of the best or nothing? Well, that next chapter in their story, it's being written as we speak.
You know that blue and white roundel? It's one of the most recognized badges in the entire world, right? A symbol of German engineering, luxury, and just pure performance. But what if I told you that behind this icon of the open road, there's a hidden story, a history built on shadows and secrets? So let's peel back the layers and really look at the two sides of the BMW badge.
So what's BMW all about? Well, it really boils down to this one promise: sheer driving pleasure. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about that feeling you get behind the wheel, the connection between you, the car, and the road. This whole idea is the foundation of their entire brand.
And for a lot of us, especially if you're in the US or the UK, that promise was boiled down to this killer slogan: the ultimate driving machine. I mean, it's bold, it's confident, and for decades, it basically cemented BMW's reputation as the gold standard for performance and precision engineering.
And look, they didn't just stumble into this reputation. It was built brick by brick over a century with vehicles that didn't just sell, they created whole new categories. It all started way back in the 20s with the R32 motorcycle, which just redefined engineering. After the war, you have this quirky little Isetta bubble car that literally saved the company. And then bam, the icons we all know and love. The 2002 sedan gave the brand its sporty soul, the legendary 3 Series created a whole new class of car, and more recently, the i3 signaled this bold leap into an electric future. You see the pattern here, right? Just undeniable innovation time after time.
But that incredible legacy of innovation almost came to a screeching halt. Seriously. Despite all its engineering genius, by 1959, BMW was on the brink of total collapse. It just couldn't find its footing after the war, and bankruptcy wasn't just a risk, it looked like a done deal.
So, who on earth would step in to save this failing German icon? The answer brings a family onto the stage that would basically become BMW for the next 60-plus years: the Quants. In 1959, two brothers, Herbert and Harald Quant, took their massive family fortune and made a huge bet on BMW. It was this incredibly bold move that not only saved the company from being a footnote in history, but also cemented their family's place right at the heart of its future, a position they still hold to this very day.
Okay, so that brings us to the real question here, the core of this whole explainer. This money, the fortune that saved the ultimate driving machine, where did it actually come from? Well, the answer takes us back another generation, to one of the darkest chapters in modern history. The family patriarch was a man named Günther Quandt, and he wasn't just a businessman. He was an incredibly shrewd operator who built an industrial empire by hitching his wagon to the rise of the Third Reich. You see, he saw war as an opportunity. Günther Quandt landed these huge, profitable contracts to turn out guns, uniforms, you name it, for Hitler's military. So his fortune wasn't just a casualty of the war, it was literally built by the war.
And the way this empire was built, well, it's dark. The Quandt enterprise grew by taking over companies that were seized from their Jewish owners. His factories, they were powered by forced labor, using prisoners from concentration camps who were, in many cases, literally worked to death. It was a system that, as one investigation later put it, was a place, quote, where human pain is translated into profit. I mean, think about that. The brutal efficiency that fueled the growth of the Quandt empire, it was all built on just immense human suffering.
So after the war in 1946, Günther was arrested, suspected of being a Nazi collaborator. But he was acquitted, arguing that he was forced to join the party. And this verdict? It was absolutely pivotal. It meant his entire empire and all the wealth he'd amassed during the war stayed right there in his family's hands. And that, right there, is the very same fortune that would eventually buy control of BMW.
Fast forward to today, and that legacy, that fortune, is now in the hands of Günther's descendants. His grandson, Stefan Quandt, and his granddaughter, Suzanne Klatten, are the quiet, almost invisible figures who now control BMW.
And when I say control, I mean control. Just look at this. Together, Stefan Quandt and Suzanne Klatten own a majority stake in the company. That's not just influence, that's immense, almost total power over one of the world's most famous car brands.
And their strategy for using this power is fascinating. Power without visibility. Right? Think about it. Unlike the billionaires we see all over the news, the Quandts have, for generations, made it a point to operate from the shadows. They guard their influence like a fortress and avoid the public eye at all costs.
Secrecy is everything.
And this control is basically locked in place by what's called a blocking stake, which Stefan Quandt holds personally. What that means is his share is so big, he can single-handedly shoot down any hostile takeover attempt or any big strategic change he doesn't like. Bottom line, the family's control is pretty much untouchable.
So you've got this incredibly complex history sitting underneath a company that today is making a huge and remarkably successful pivot into a brand new automotive era.
Just look at this number. In the first half of 2024, BMW sales of fully electric vehicles just shot up by an incredible 34%. This isn't just a company adapting to change, this is a company aggressively grabbing the lead. And that growth looks even more impressive when you put it next to their biggest rivals. While Mercedes-Benz actually saw their EV sales drop in that same period, BMW's just took off. So they're not just in the electric race, right now they're winning the premium part of it.
And their vision for what's next is super ambitious and really clear. They're aiming for EVs to be half of all their sales by 2030, and the really big goal to be completely carbon neutral from top to bottom by 2050. This is a massive pivot.
So there you have it, a legacy of sheer driving pleasure built on a fortune with a shadowed past, an electric future being steered by a dynasty that prizes secrecy. The next time you see that iconic blue and white badge on the road, the real question is, what story does it tell you?
So you think you know Ferrari? You know, the screaming engines, that iconic red paint? Well, what if I told you the cars, they're almost a side product? Yeah, really. Today we're going to dive into this incredible billion-dollar business puzzle. And trust me, once you see how it all works, you'll never look at that prancing horse the same way again.
Okay, just look at these numbers for a second. On one hand, you've got Volvo. In 2023, they sold over 700,000 cars. Solid. Then you have Ferrari, selling just under 14,000. That is, what, 52 times fewer cars? So you'd think their profit would be tiny, right? Wrong. Look at that operating profit. It's basically the same. And the profit margin? It's not even close. Ferrari is pulling in a mind-boggling 27%, while Volvo's at 5%. This right here, this is the whole mystery.
So that leads us to the big question, the one we're here to answer. How in the world can a company that sells 52 times fewer cars be just as profitable? The answer? Well, it's where you find the absolute genius of the Ferrari brand.
All right, so here's the very first piece of the puzzle. And it's a big one. You have to completely change how you think about Ferrari. You have to stop seeing it as a car company, because honestly, it really isn't.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This comes straight from the top. The CEO of Ferrari himself said it perfectly. He said, "We are a luxury company that is also doing cars." Let that sink in. That one sentence is everything. They don't see themselves competing with Ford or even Porsche. They're playing in the same sandbox as Hermes or Chanel, these titans of luxury, where what you're really buying isn't a product, it's exclusivity.
So what does that actually mean? It means their entire business model is flipped completely upside down. A normal car maker, think Volvo, their whole game is about volume. Sell more cars, make more money. Simple. But Ferrari, they do the exact opposite. Their goal isn't volume, it's exclusivity. Total, absolute exclusivity. And that's what lets them charge these insane prices. They're not just playing a different game, they're on a completely different planet.
Okay, so if exclusivity is the goal, how do you actually do that? How do you keep it so special? Well, that brings us to the real secret sauce in their strategy, something they've perfected for decades. It's the art of scarcity.
And this idea, it's not some newfangled marketing trick. This goes all the way back to the man himself, Enzo Ferrari. His core philosophy was to always deliver one car less than the market demands. Think about that. He intentionally created a situation where there are never enough cars to go around. It guarantees that demand is always higher than supply, creating this constant state of desire, this permanent waiting list of people dying to get their hands on one. And if you want to see just how serious they are about this, look at how you buy one of their top-tier cars. You literally can't just show up with $1 million and say, "I'll take one." You have to earn the right to buy one. Ferrari keeps score. They track your purchase history, whether you show up to their exclusive events, everything. Only their most loyal, most dedicated customers get that golden ticket, an invitation to spend their money. It's not a sale, it's an audition. So this whole strategy of scarcity and being a luxury brand, does it actually work? What does it look like on the bottom line? Well, it leads to a kind of profitability that is just unheard of in the car industry. Just look at this graph. It tells the whole story. You see Ferrari way up there with a 27% profit margin. 27%. Now look at the median for the entire auto industry. It's less than 8. They even blow past a company like Porsche, which is already a high-margin business. That massive gap, that's the real financial power you get when you're not just selling a machine, you're selling a legend.
And if you want a perfect, concrete example, let's talk about the LaFerrari. When it was new, it sold for about $1.4 million. A lot of money, right? But here's the thing. They made so few, and you had to be on that special list to get one. So what happened? Its value exploded. Today, one of those will set you back almost $4 million. That's nearly 3 times what it originally cost. Suddenly, a car isn't a car anymore. It's an appreciating asset, like a piece of fine art, and that just makes people want it even more.
Okay, so this whole thing, this bizarre upside-down business model, it actually has a name. There's a really cool economic theory that explains exactly what's going on here. It's kind of the master key that unlocks the entire Ferrari puzzle.
It's called a Veblen good. Now, basic economics, right? Price goes up, demand goes down. We all know that. But for a Veblen good, the laws of economics get thrown out the window. The more expensive it gets, the more people want it. The insane price tag isn't a bug, it's the main feature. The whole point is that it's expensive.
So why does this happen? It's all psychology. It's about a few key things. 1, it's a massive status symbol. 2, it's what economists call conspicuous consumption, which is just a fancy way of saying you're showing everyone you've got money to burn. And 3, that rarity we talked about just makes you want it more. Owning a Ferrari isn't about getting from A to B. It's a declaration. It says you're a member of a tiny elite club that most people can't get into.
But is this whole thing foolproof? Is this perfectly crafted image invincible? Well, maybe not. There's one little area where the whole legacy might be a bit fragile.
Think about it. So much of the Ferrari magic comes from the racetrack. The brand is Formula One. But here's the potential crack in that shiny red armor. Their F1 team hasn't won a big championship since 2008. That's a long time. Now, for the moment, it doesn't seem to be hurting car sales at all. But it does make you wonder, if that legendary on-track winning fades into memory, can the mystique they sell off the track really last forever?
So when you put it all together, the engineered scarcity, the weird economics, the psychology of desire, it becomes pretty clear that the actual car is only a small piece of what you're buying. Which really leaves us with just one big question to think about. Is Ferrari actually in the business of selling cars? Or are they in the much more profitable business of selling the dream of becoming one of the very few people on Earth who gets to own one?
You know, it's kind of wild when you think about it. How can one single name come to define an entire century? How can it stand for industry, freedom, rebellion, and some really tough contradictions all at the same time? Well, today we're diving into a name that did just that. It's a story that starts not with an engine, but with an idea.
And that idea really kicks off with a cultural explosion. So picture this. It's 1965. America is changing big time. A whole new generation, the baby boomers, are coming of age. They've got jobs, they've got ambition, and man, they want something that's just theirs.
And wow, in just a few years, that little spark became an absolute wildfire. Suddenly, it wasn't just a car anymore. Nope, it was a symbol of raw performance, a star on the big screen, and an icon that just perfectly captured the imagination of a generation that was hungry for speed and for style.
And the legend just kept growing. It reinvented itself over and over, tapping into that nostalgia, but always pushing forward. It was proof that a truly great idea doesn't just fade out, it evolves. All the way to today, where it's taken on this radical new form, sparking a whole new debate about what it even means to be a Mustang. Of course, we are talking about the Ford Mustang. But here's the thing. To really, truly understand the icon, you have to understand the architect who built the entire empire. Okay, so let's get into it. Back in the mid-60s, Ford saw this huge opportunity. The youth market was just booming, and these young buyers wanted a car that was sporty, stylish, and, this is the key part, affordable. What they came up with wasn't just a new model, it was a total phenomenon. And the response? It was just staggering. I mean, Ford's own marketing team thought, hey, maybe we'll sell 100,000 of these in the first year. They got 22,000 orders on day one. They blew past that 100,000 mark in 3 months and sold 1 million cars in just a year and a half. This wasn't a success. It was a complete redefinition of the market. So, the competition? They were caught completely flat-footed. They try to belittle it, calling it a pony car, to make it sound small and less serious than their big, expensive muscle cars. But the joke was on them. The nickname stuck, and Ford and its millions of fans were like, yeah, it's a pony car. And just like that, a whole new category of automobile was born. The rest of the industry was basically in panic mode, scrambling to catch up. Plymouth, for instance, was so sure about their new Barracuda that one of their execs went and made this super bold, very public claim, which of course begs the question, where is the Barracuda today? Exactly. It's a footnote. This shows you just how massive the Mustang's impact was right from the jump. But it also makes you wonder, where did this radical idea of a cool, accessible car for the people even come from in the first place? Well, for that, we have to go to the man himself, Henry Ford. Now, this guy was a brilliant, self-taught engineer who genuinely believed he could build a better world. But he was also, let's just say, a deeply complex and, frankly, a very controversial figure. And you just can't tell his story without facing these profound contradictions head-on. This was a visionary who wanted to put the world on wheels, but he also used his own newspaper to publish hateful anti-Semitic articles. He pioneered the revolutionary $5 a day wage, yet his work was openly admired by Adolf Hitler, who literally kept a portrait of Ford in his office. It's a legacy that you have to look at, warts and all. So, setting aside the controversy for just a moment, let's focus on his core mission, because it was deceptively simple. Make a car so affordable that the very people building it could actually go out and buy it. And he pulled this off with two absolutely game-changing ideas. First up, the moving assembly line. Now, Ford didn't invent it, but he's the one who perfected it for something as complex as a car. By breaking down the whole process into 84 distinct, simple steps, he didn't just make things faster, he completely re-engineered the nature of industrial work itself. And the sheer scale of the efficiency gain here is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about taking over 12 hours to build one car chassis and slashing that all the way down to an hour and a half. That isn't an improvement, it's a complete transformation of what was economically possible. His second big idea was just as radical. In 1914, he more than doubled the average factory wage to $5 a day. I mean, his competitors, the other industrialists, they thought he had completely lost his mind. But here's the genius of it. This wasn't about charity, not at all. It was a brilliant business move. It immediately solved his problem with workers constantly quitting, and it attracted the best talent in Detroit. But even more important, it helped create a stable middle class that could suddenly afford the very cars they were building. He was literally creating his own customers. So this whole production philosophy gave us the Model T, which was really a masterpiece of simple, utilitarian design for the masses. And his focus was on absolute, total uniformity to maximize that efficiency. It's all captured perfectly in his famous quote about the Model T's color options, or, the lack thereof. Black paint just happened to dry the fastest, so every single car was black. End of story. But then, decades later, the Mustang comes along and takes his core idea of a car for the masses and just completely flips it on its head. The whole paradigm shifted from uniformity to mass customization. You didn't just buy a Mustang, you built your Mustang. It was all about personal expression, the total opposite of the one-size-fits-all Model T. All right, let's fast forward to today, because Ford is now facing its biggest challenge since the Model T itself, pivoting to an all-electric world. And this transition is testing the very foundation of the company. And their strategy is a massive gamble. I mean, in huge markets like Europe, Ford is killing off cars that have been bestsellers for decades, like the Focus and the Fiesta, to go all in on EVs like the Mustang Mach-E and other profitable imports. It's a real bet the company kind of move. But here's the fundamental tension they're dealing with. Even as they push super hard into electric, the company's financial stability, the thing that keeps the lights on, still relies heavily on old-school gas-powered trucks like the F-150. EVs are the future, but gasoline is paying today's bills, and that forces some really tough decisions. And get this, in a move that tells you everything you need to know, Ford is actually pausing production of its flagship electric truck, the F-150 Lightning, specifically so they can build more of their gas-powered cash cow. That one move just perfectly highlights the immense pressure and the complexity of making this historic shift. And so this brings us to the final, really crucial question. Henry Ford's legacy is one of brilliant innovation, but also deeply troubling ideologies. To survive the 21st century, what parts of that revolutionary and contradictory legacy does the company need to keep, and what parts must it finally leave behind? How does a brand like Harley-Davidson, one of the world's most iconic symbols of freedom, rebellion, and American muscle, even begin to survive in a world that's changing faster than ever? Today, we're getting into that deep-seated tension, exploring the battle between Harley's legendary past and its desperate strategy for survival. This quote really says it all, doesn't it? For the true believers, a Harley isn't just a machine you own. It's a fundamental part of your identity. It's a declaration of who you are. It separates the real deal from the wannabes. So how in the world does a brand become, well, a belief system? Well, there's actually a term for this, a subculture of consumption. It's what happens when a whole group of people decides to build their social world, their values, their rituals, their entire community around a shared obsession with a brand. And Harley-Davidson, they're pretty much the poster child for this.
All right, so let's peel back the layers here. What does it actually mean to be part of this world? What are the core beliefs that hold this whole thing together?
You can really boil the brand's DNA down to 4 core values. First up, personal freedom. That feeling of escaping the 9-to-5 cage. Then you've got patriotism, this deep, unbreakable bond with American heritage. There's also machismo, a kind of unapologetic toughness. And finally, and maybe most importantly, brotherhood, a fierce, almost tribal loyalty to your fellow riders. These aren't just marketing terms. For the community, this is gospel. And just look at this photo from an in-depth study. It shows you just how powerful symbols like the American flag are here. It's not just decoration. It's woven into the very fabric of the community, a constant visual shout-out to the brand's American soul. And look, to really get this world, you can't just observe it. You have to live it. And that's exactly what these researchers did. This timeline shows their incredible 3-year journey, from being outsiders just watching, to dipping their toes in, and finally to going all in, buying their own Harleys and actually becoming part of the subculture. That's some serious dedication. And what they discovered is that becoming a biker, it's a whole journey. It's a real transformation. You might start out just experimenting, trying on the leather jacket. Then comes identification. You're all in. You buy the bike, get the gear, learn the unwritten rules, and finally, you reach the stage of internalization, where it's no longer a costume. The biker persona is just you. Okay, so this all leads to a huge, glaring contradiction. If this brand has this almost religious level of devotion, this incredible embedded culture, then why on earth is the company in so much trouble? All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the hard numbers, because this is where that powerful heritage we've been talking about starts to feel more like a liability, a serious headwind. Okay, first up, in 2024, global retail sales of new Harleys dropped by 7%. Now, that's not great, but it's a clear warning shot across the bow. But wait, it gets a lot worse. In the first quarter of 2025, right here in North America, their home turf, sales didn't just dip, they plummeted. We're talking a staggering 24% drop. That's not just a leak, my friends. That's a full-blown crisis. So what's going wrong? Well, for starters, the loyal customer base, they're getting older. And younger riders, they're looking at the high price tags and they're just not buying in. Plus, you've got this huge consumer shift towards new tech, and the competition from both old and new rivals is absolutely relentless. So what do? Well, Harley's response was this massive, high-stakes 5-year plan. They call it the Hardwire, and believe me, it's their all-in bet to turn this ship around. Think of the Hardwire as a 2-pronged attack. On one hand, they're doubling down on what's always made them money, the big, beefy, profitable bikes that their core audience absolutely loves. But on the other hand, and this is the wild part, they're pouring a ton of money into a completely electric future. And you can see that balancing act perfectly right here. They're trying to keep the lights on with their core business, while at the same time funding these new adventures into different kinds of bikes, and of course, pouring massive resources into their all-electric brand Livewire. Yeah, Livewire is the big one. It's the moonshot. This isn't just a new bike. It's a whole new brand, built from the ground up, designed to lead the charge in the electric motorcycle revolution. This is what Harley thinks the next 100 years looks like. But as you can see, it's a massive gamble. The promise? It's huge. We're talking market leadership, federal grants, a shiny new R&D center in Silicon Valley. But the reality on the ground? Oof. People just aren't buying them that fast. The division is bleeding cash, over $20 million a quarter. And let's be honest, finding a charger is still a huge headache.
So, this all brings us to the heart of the matter, the final conflict. And this isn't just about spreadsheets and sales figures. We're talking about a battle for the very soul of the Harley-Davidson brand.
It's like you've got two completely different worlds smashing into each other. In one corner, you have everything that built the legend: authenticity, American heritage, machismo. On the other side, you've got the cold, hard reality of what the company needs to do to survive. Adopt EVs, go global, appeal to new people, and focus on sustainability. I mean, how do you even begin to reconcile these two?
And listen to this quote from a longtime traditional biker. He's talking about the new, quote, yuppie posers coming into the fold. He's not talking about business. You can just feel the tension in that, can't you? The resentment, the fear that the original spirit is just evaporating.
You know, at the end of the day, it really all boils down to this one simple truth. Harley's history is its greatest superpower, but it's also its heaviest anchor. The very thing that made the brand an icon is the exact thing that makes it so incredibly hard to change. Which leaves us with the million-dollar question. For a brand that was literally built on the thunder of a V-twin engine, on a legacy of pure, uncut rebellion, is a silent electric future a brilliant act of evolution, or is it a betrayal of everything it ever stood for? Can Harley-Davidson actually save its business without losing its soul?
So when you hear the name Bugatti, what comes to mind? It's way more than just a car, right? It's this incredible legend, a story that's been over 100 years in the making, all about art, insane speed, and some pretty amazing comebacks.
And really, this one quote says it all. This is the key to the entire Bugatti philosophy. From day one, the goal was never just to be better than the competition. No, the goal was to create something so different, so advanced, that it just couldn't be compared to anything else.
And it all starts with this guy, the founder, Ettore Bugatti. Now, the thing you have to understand is that he wasn't an engineer, not by training. He actually came from this incredibly artistic family, and that background, well, it defined everything he ever created.
So you have this young man born into a world of art who becomes completely obsessed with mechanics. He teaches himself engineering, designs his first car, and wins an award for it at just 20 years old. By 1909, he's opened his own shop in an old factory, setting the stage for what would become one of the most legendary race cars of all time.
Let's just geek out on this for a second, because the Type 35 was a total game changer. While everyone else was using these heavy, clunky wire-spoked wheels, Bugatti pioneered lightweight cast alloy wheels. They even hollowed out the front axle just to save a little bit of weight. These weren't just minor improvements. This was next-level thinking that made the car faster, handle better, and, frankly, look like a piece of art.
And the result of all that innovation? This number? It's just staggering. The Type 35 didn't just win races, it absolutely dominated. We're talking over 1,000 victories. At its peak, it was winning an average of 14 races every single week. Unbelievable.
But Ettore's genius wasn't just confined to the racetrack. He also created, well, this monster, the Type 41 Royale. The engine was a colossal 12.7 liters. To put that in perspective, that's about 8 times bigger than the engine in a typical modern car. This thing was a rolling palace, built for kings and queens.
And this right here, this quote, tells you everything you need to know about Ettore's personality. Apparently, a customer complained about the car's brakes, and this was his response. It's just perfect, right? It shows his laser focus on one thing and one thing only: performance.
But then, the story takes a truly tragic turn. In 1939, Ettore's son, Jean Bugatti, a brilliant designer in his own right and the heir to the company, was killed in a crash. He was testing the very car that had just won the legendary Le Mans race. In an instant, the company's future was shattered.
So, after World War II, and with Ettore himself passing away in 1947, the original company just couldn't recover. It limped along for a bit, but eventually, in 1963, it was sold off. And just like that, the Bugatti name went quiet. It went into hibernation for decades.
But you know, a legend like Bugatti doesn't just die. It waits. And then, in 1987, it started to wake up. An Italian entrepreneur, Romano Ardioli, who was a huge Bugatti fan, bought the rights to the name. He had this crazy, ambitious dream to bring Bugatti back and make it the greatest in the world again.
And wow, this was the result of that dream, the EB110. They unveiled it on what would have been Ettores' 110th birthday. It was designed from the ground up to be the most technologically advanced supercar on the planet. What a tribute, right?
I mean, the tech in this thing was straight out of science fiction for the early 90s. We're talking a V12 engine with not one, not two, but 4 turbochargers. All-wheel drive, which was rare for supercars back then, and a chassis made from carbon fiber, the same stuff used in F1 and fighter jets. This car was a glimpse into the future.
And man, did it deliver. It smashed the world record, becoming the fastest production car on Earth. It was a massive success, but then disaster struck. The global economy tanked, the luxury market collapsed, and by 1995, Bugatti was bankrupt. Again.
But the legend just refused to stay down. In 1998, the mighty Volkswagen Group steps in and buys the brand. And they didn't just want to bring it back. They laid down a challenge that sounded completely insane. Build a street-legal car with more than 1,000 horsepower and a top speed over 400 kilometers per hour.
I mean, just look at these numbers. 1,000 horsepower, 400 kilometers an hour. These goals weren't just ambitious. They were absurd. To even attempt this, engineers had to throw out the rulebook and rethink everything they knew about building a car.
And this is what they came up with. The Veyron. To hit those impossible targets, it needed a massive W16 engine, that's basically 2 V8s fused together, and an incredible 10 radiators just to keep the whole thing from melting into a puddle. This was one of the biggest engineering challenges in automotive history.
But here's the thing. It couldn't just be a rocket ship with wheels. It had to be a Bugatti. That meant connecting all that modern tech back to Ettores' original philosophy, that perfect blend of art, form, and technique. It had to be beautiful, not just brutally fast. And that brings us to this simple but incredibly powerful design philosophy. Form follows performance. What that means is that every single curve, every vent, every line you see on a modern Bugatti is there for a specific, functional reason. Nothing is just for decoration. And you can really see that artistic DNA in their special editions. On the left, you've got the Pur Sang, which means pure blood, celebrating raw aluminum and bare carbon fiber. And on the right, a collaboration with the fashion house Hermès. It's basically a $1 million handbag you can drive at over 400 kilometers an hour.
So the Veyron didn't just break records. It created an entirely new category of car. And its successor, the Chiron, took that incredible foundation and just dialed everything up to 11. More power, more speed, more luxury. It just kept pushing the boundaries.
This table just lays it all out, and it's kind of wild to look at. We thought 1,001 horsepower in the Veyron was the absolute limit. Then the Chiron comes along and jumps to 1,500. And the Supersport, a mind-melting 1,600 horsepower. With every new model, they just kept rewriting what we thought was possible. And this is a perfect example of form follows performance in the real world. See that extended rear end on the Chiron Supersport? That's called a long tail. It's not there just to look cool, it's aerodynamically shaped to keep the car stable at ridiculously high speeds. It's pure, beautiful function.
So what do you even call a machine like this? It's not just a supercar anymore, it's graduated. This is a hypercar. It's the absolute top tier, the pinnacle of what's possible with performance, tech, and design. It's a category that Bugatti basically invented and still completely owns. Which brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? From Ettore Bugatti tinkering in his workshop, obsessed with art and mechanics, to today's engineering marvels, the brand has always lived in this space between two worlds. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. Is a Bugatti the ultimate performance machine, or is it the ultimate piece of automotive art?
Have you ever stopped to think about how a product becomes, well, more than just a product? How a car, just a thing made of steel and glass, can turn into a full-blown cultural icon, a symbol of freedom for a whole generation? Well, today, we're diving into the story of the one car that pulled it off better than any other, the Ford Mustang.
Just take a look at this number, 418,812. That's how many Mustangs Ford sold in its very first year on the market. That's not just a big number, it was an all-time record.
So, the big question is, how on earth did this happen? Was it just some kind of lucky fluke? A happy accident? Or was there a master plan behind it all? We're going to break down the strategy,
the timing, and the cultural genius that turned this car into an absolute legend. Let's get right into it.
To really understand the Mustang's incredible success, we have to start with a colossal failure. It's the early 1960s. America is changing fast, but Ford is reeling. They had just lost a jaw-dropping $250 million on a car called the Edsel, and the pressure to get the next one right was, to put it mildly, immense.
You see, there was this perfect storm brewing in the country. The baby boomers, the biggest generation in American history, were all getting their driver's licenses. The nation was getting richer, more people were going to college, and suddenly you had millions of brand new car buyers hitting the market. Young people, working women, and families that suddenly needed a second car.
And here's the thing. This new market did not want the huge, practical, frankly boring sedans that their parents drove. They saw a car as part of their identity. They wanted something that felt personal, something that was fun and sporty. Something that screamed freedom, not another trip to the grocery store. The stage was set. This was a market just waiting for the right car to come along.
And the one person who saw this opportunity with crystal clarity was a young, super ambitious Ford executive named Lee Iacocca. He was not one of the old-school car guys. He saw where things were going, and it was not the car Ford was planning to build.
So at the time, Ford was developing this small, practical, but really uninspired car called the Cardinal. Iacocca took one look at it and just knew it was totally wrong for the American market, so he made one of the gutsiest calls in business history. He convinced Henry Ford II to cancel the entire project, writing off a $35 million investment. He was basically betting his whole career that he could build something better.
But here's the thing. Iacocca wasn't just going on a hunch. He had a plan. He put together this secret team, kind of an off-the-books group he called the Fairlane Committee, and their mission was to use data and market research, which was a pretty radical idea back then, to design the perfect car from scratch, based entirely on what those young buyers said they wanted. So, what did all that research actually tell them? Well, it gave the committee a precise, almost scientific blueprint for a blockbuster hit. It really boiled down to 5 key ingredients. Every single one of these details was deliberate, pulled straight from that market research. It had to have 4 seats, not 2, so it had mass appeal. It needed to be lightweight, under 2,500 pounds, to make it feel nimble and fun to drive. The styling had to be dramatic, that iconic long hood and short trunk. And this was crucial. It had to be highly customizable, so every single buyer could feel like they were getting their car. And the magic number, the absolute killer detail, a price tag under $2,500. Even the name was perfect, Mustang. It just captured that spirit of the wild, untamed American West. And here's a fun little fact for you. That name was so powerful, so evocative of the whole American way of life, that a German company had actually launched a brand of jeans called Mustang way back in 1958, years before the car even existed. Okay, so they had the perfect car, the perfect name. Now it was time for the launch. And Iacocca's team cooked up a marketing campaign that was every bit as revolutionary as the car itself. This was an absolute masterclass in marketing. The night before the launch, Ford bought advertising time on all 3 major TV networks at the exact same time. 30 million homes saw it at once. The next morning, they unveiled the car at the huge New York World's Fair. And on that very same day, Iacocca and the Mustang landed on the covers of both Time and Newsweek. It was an inescapable cultural moment. You couldn't miss it.
And the result of all this? Absolute pandemonium. Ford's own internal goal was to sell 100,000 cars in the entire first year. They sold 22,000 on the very first day. By the end of the year, they hadn't just beaten their goal, they'd sold over 4 times what they ever thought possible.
The Mustang wasn't just a hit, it was a genuine phenomenon. It completely blindsided the competition and changed the entire car industry forever.
I mean, the impact was just staggering. It generated over $1 billion in profit for Ford in just its first 2 years. It single-handedly created an entirely new category of car, the pony car, which forced rivals like GM and Chrysler to scramble and create their own versions, like the Camaro and the Challenger. And most importantly, it became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of everything it meant to be young and free in the 1960s.
You know, years later, a commenter on Reddit just summed it up perfectly. It wasn't just one thing. It was the design, the price, the brilliant marketing, and that perfect alignment with a massive cultural shift. It was, simply, the right car at the right time.
Which really leaves us with one final question. In today's world, with a market that's so fragmented and competitive, could a phenomenon like the Mustang ever happen again? Or was it just a once-in-a-generation perfect storm of vision, strategy, and timing that we may never see again? It's definitely something to think about.